You know it's going to be a bad New Year's Eve when your wife starts the party by announcing she's screwing the neighbor. Not in those exact words, mind you. Nina had more class than that. She waited until she was 3 drinks deep and the living room was packed with our so-called friends before she decided to detonate our marriage. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Owen Barlow, and I'm a 36-year-old IT project manager who thought he had his life figured out. Suburban house in Millbrook, Connecticut. Decent job. Wife who took real estate photos for a living and looked good doing it. The American dream, right down to the white picket fence that I'd painted myself last spring while Nina complained it was the wrong shade. I should have known something was wrong when she spent 2 hours getting ready for our own party. Nina usually threw on jeans and called it good, but that night she wore a black dress that cost more than my monthly car payment, the kind that made every guy in the room forget they had wives of their own. "Owen, honey, can you get me another wine?" she called from across the living room, where she was laughing at something Trent Malloy had whispered in her ear. Trent, our neighbor, the guy who'd moved in 6 months ago and immediately started improving his property with landscaping that probably cost more than I made in a year. 35 years old, built like he spent his days hauling rocks instead of just arranging them, and blessed with the kind of easy charm that made women forget basic things like wedding vows. I grabbed Nina's wine from the kitchen, where my buddy Tony from work was holding court with a story about our latest client disaster. "So this guy wants us to build a database for his collection of vintage lunchboxes," Tony was saying, and when I ask him how many records we're talking about, he says 3. 3 lunchboxes, Owen. He wanted to pay us 15 grand to track 3 lunchboxes. I laughed, but my attention was on the living room where Nina had somehow gotten even closer to Trent. His fiancée, Laurel, stood by the window, staring out at the snow and pretending not to notice her man's wandering hands. "Earth to Owen," Tony said. "You're missing the good part." "Sorry, just keeping an eye on things." Tony followed my gaze and winced. "Oh, man. How long has that been going on?" "What do you mean?" "Come on, Owen, I've got eyes. Your wife's been flirting with Captain Landscape all night, and he's eating it up." I handed Nina her wine, interrupting whatever private conversation she was having with Trent. She took it without looking at me, her attention fixed on his face like he was reciting poetry instead of probably talking about mulch. "Thanks, babe," she said absently. The countdown started at 11:58. Everyone gathered in the living room, champagne glasses raised, voices getting louder as the numbers got smaller. I stood next to my wife, watching her watch Trent instead of the TV. 10, 9, 8. Nina moved closer to Trent. 7, 6, 5. Laurel looked like she might cry. 4, 3, 2. Nina turned away from me completely. 1, Happy New Year! And that's when my wife of 8 years grabbed our neighbor by the face and kissed him like the world was ending. Right there in our living room, in front of God and everybody, while his fiancée stood 10 feet away and I held 2 glasses of champagne like an idiot. The room went quiet except for the TV blaring about Times Square. Someone's phone camera flashed. Then another. I heard Angie, Nina's best friend, gasp and whisper something to her husband Mike. Laurel dropped her glass. It shattered on the hardwood floor. I'd refinished myself, champagne spreading across the boards like a stain I'd never get out. "Nina," I said quietly. She broke away from Trent, lipstick smeared, eyes bright with alcohol and something that looked like triumph. "What?" she said, swaying slightly. "It's New Year's. You're supposed to kiss someone. You're supposed to kiss your husband." She laughed, and it was the ugliest sound I'd ever heard from her. "Why would I do that?" "You're worthless, Owen. Everyone knows it. I'm leaving you for someone who actually knows how to make a woman happy." The room was silent now. Trent had the decency to look uncomfortable, but not uncomfortable enough to step away from my wife, or apologize to his fiancée, who was now crying openly. I set down the champagne glasses very carefully on the coffee table. My hands weren't shaking, which surprised me. I felt oddly calm, like I was watching this happen to someone else. "Is that right?" I said. "That's right. Trent and I are in love, have been for months. We're done hiding it." More phone cameras flashed. I could already imagine the videos spreading through town like wildfire. Owen Barlow, the cuckold who got dumped at his own New Year's party. "Months," I repeated. "Months," Nina confirmed, sliding her arm around Trent's waist. "He knows how to treat a woman, how to make her feel alive." I nodded slowly, like this made perfect sense, like my wife hadn't just destroyed our marriage and my reputation in front of 20 people with cameras. "Well," I said, "I guess that explains a lot." The party broke up fast after that. People mumbled excuses and grabbed their coats, avoiding eye contact. Laurel left without a word, tears streaming down her face. Trent followed Nina upstairs to what used to be our bedroom, leaving me to clean up the mess, literally and figuratively. I spent the next hour picking up glasses and wiping down surfaces while my wife and her lover made noise above my head that I tried very hard not to analyze. Tony stayed to help, bless him, but even he didn't know what to say. "Owen, I'm sorry, man. That was... yeah. You want me to stay? I can crash on the couch." "No, I'm fine. Really." He looked at me like I might be having a breakdown. Maybe I was. Maybe that's why everything felt so crystal clear, like someone had adjusted the focus on my entire life. "You sure?" "I'm sure. Go home to Janet. Kiss your wife. Be grateful she's not Nina." After Tony left, I sat in my living room listening to the sounds from upstairs and thinking about the videos I'd seen people taking. By morning, everyone in Millbrook would know that Owen Barlow's wife had humiliated him at his own party. That was when I started planning. Nina came downstairs at 10 a.m. wearing my old college t-shirt and a sheepish expression that might have worked on the old Owen. The Owen who spent 8 years making excuses for her moods and pretending not to notice when she flirted with other men. "Morning, honey," she said, like nothing had happened. "God, my head is ruining me. I think I overdid it last night." I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop and a cup of coffee, looking perfectly normal. Domestic, even. The kind of husband who'd forgive and forget because that's what good husbands do. "You could say that," I replied, not looking up from my screen. She poured herself coffee and sat across from me, wincing at the light coming through the window. "I hope I didn't embarrass myself too badly. You know how I get when I drink wine." "Oh, you were memorable." Was I awful? I have these flashes of, oh God, did I say something to Trent? I remember talking to him, but it's all fuzzy. I finally looked at her. Really looked. Nina was still beautiful at 34, with the kind of blonde hair that cost a fortune to maintain, and green eyes that had hooked me back in college. But sitting there in my shirt, lying to my face about the best documented adultery in Millbrook history, she looked like a stranger. "You don't remember?" "Not really. Just bits and pieces. Why? What did I do?" I turned my laptop around so she could see the screen. It was her Facebook page, which was currently blowing up with notifications. Comments, tags, messages. The video someone had posted was already at 57 shares. Nina's face went white as she watched herself grab Trent and announce to our living room that she was leaving me for him. The audio was crystal clear, thanks to Mike's expensive phone. Every word of her little speech preserved for posterity. "Oh my God," she whispered. "It was a joke, right?" I said calmly. "That's what you're going to tell me. That you were drunk and it was just a stupid joke." "Owen, Because if it was a joke, I've got some bad news. People aren't laughing. Your phone's been buzzing all morning. Might want to check your messages." She grabbed her phone from the counter and started scrolling. I watched her face cycle through confusion, horror, and something that might have been panic as she realized how bad this looked. "This is a disaster," she said. "Everyone's going to think that you're cheating on me with our neighbor?" "Yeah, I can see how that would be embarrassing, especially since it's true." She looked up sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" I opened a new tab on my laptop and showed her the email account I'd accessed using the password she'd been too lazy to change. The same password she'd used for everything for the past 3 years, Trent M 2023. "Subtle," I said. Her face went from white to gray as she saw the months of messages between her and Trent. Planning their affair, complaining about their respective partners, making arrangements to meet while I was at work and Laurel was at her social work job. "You went through my email?" "Your laptop was open. You left it on the kitchen counter yesterday while you were getting ready for the party. I was going to close it, but then I saw an interesting subject line. Can't wait to be done hiding." I scrolled down to show her the message she'd sent Trent that afternoon. "Tonight's the night. I'm going to tell Owen it's over. Then we can be together for real." "Owen, please, I can explain." "I'm sure you can. You always were creative. But here's the thing, Nina. I don't want to hear it." I closed the laptop and stood up, leaving my coffee on the table. "I'm going out for a while. When I get back, I'd like you to be gone." "Gone? What do you mean, gone?" "I mean pack a bag and go stay with Trent, or your sister, or a hotel. I don't really care where, as long as it's not here." She stood up too, suddenly looking more angry than scared. "You can't just kick me out. This is my house too." "Actually, it's not. The deed's in my name. Wedding gift from my parents, remember? You never got around to adding yourself to it." That was a lie. Nina was on the deed, but she'd always been fuzzy about legal details, and right now she was too rattled to think straight. "You can't do this," she said. "It was one mistake, one stupid, drunken mistake." "Months of mistakes," I corrected. "Months of planning. Months of lying to my face while you screwed around behind my back." "I love you, Owen. I made a terrible mistake, but I love you." I looked at her for a long moment, this woman I'd shared a bed with for 8 years, who'd promised to love and honor me in front of our families and friends, who'd spent the last 6 months planning to leave me for a guy who probably couldn't spell commitment if you spotted him the first 8 letters. "No," I said finally, "you don't. And you know what? That's okay, because I don't love you either. Not anymore. Maybe not for a while now." I left her standing in the kitchen and drove to Murphy's bar on the other side of town, where I knew I could think without listening to Nina's voice or seeing her face, or smelling the cologne that Trent had left on my pillows. Murphy's was the kind of place where day drinking was socially acceptable and the bartender minded her own business. Gina Murphy had inherited the place from her father and ran it like a therapist's office with better whiskey. "Little early for you, Owen," she said as I slid onto a bar stool. "Special occasion." She poured me a beer without asking what kind. Gina had a gift for reading people's moods and matching them to appropriate alcohol. "Heard you had quite a party last night." Of course she'd heard. In a town like Millbrook, gossip traveled faster than the volunteer fire department. News travels fast. Video travels faster. Half the town's seen it by now. I'm sorry, hun. That was a hell of a thing to do to you. I took a long drink and considered my options. I could play the victim, let everyone feel sorry for poor Owen Barlow, whose wife left him for the landscaper, drink myself stupid and spend the next few months being the guy people whispered about at the grocery store, or I could do something else entirely. "Gina, what do you know about Trent Malloy?" She raised an eyebrow. "Besides the fact that he's currently destroying your marriage?" "Not much. Moved here about 6 months ago from Hartford. Runs a landscaping business. Drives a truck that costs more than most people's houses." "What about his fiancée?" "Laurel Chen? Sweet girl. Works for social services. Helps kids in foster care. Way too good for him, if you ask me. Why do you say that? Gina leaned against the bar and lowered her voice. Because Trent Malloy's been in here 3 times in the past month, and each time he was with a different woman. None of them were Laurel, and none of them were your wife. I set down my beer carefully. You sure about that? Honey, I've been tending bar for 15 years. I know a cheater when I see one. Your wife might think she's special, but she's just the latest in a long line. That was interesting. Very interesting. Any chance you remember what these other women looked like? One was a redhead, maybe 40. Another was younger, brunette, looked like money. The third was... She paused, thinking. Actually, I think I know her. Works at the bank downtown, married to that accountant, what's his name? Jerry something. I finished my beer and left a 20 on the bar. Thanks, Gina. This has been educational. Owen? Whatever you're thinking of doing, be smart about it. Don't give them the satisfaction of seeing you lose control. Don't worry, I said. I'm going to be very smart about this. I drove home to find Nina's car gone and a note on the kitchen counter. Gone to think. We need to talk when I get back. This doesn't have to end our marriage. I crumpled up the note and threw it away. Then I sat down with my laptop and started making lists. The thing about being an IT project manager is that you learn to think systematically, break big problems into smaller, manageable tasks, identify dependencies, plan for contingencies, execute in the proper sequence. Destroying someone's life isn't that different from launching software when you get right down to it. I started with research. Nina had left her laptop behind in her rush to get out, and she'd never been particularly careful about digital security. Her browser history told me everything I needed to know about her relationship with Trent, including the fact that they'd been meeting at the Riverside Inn every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 2 months. The Riverside Inn, where she told me she was doing a photo shoot for a new client. Her email revealed even more interesting details. Apparently, Nina had been inflating her expense reports and billing clients for shoots that never happened. Small amounts, nothing that would trigger an audit, but definitely enough to fund her twice-weekly hotel visits. I forwarded copies of everything to my personal email account, then started making phone calls. The first call was to Laurel Chen. I'd found her number in the phone book, and she answered on the second ring. Hello? Laurel, this is Owen Barlow. From last night. A long pause. Oh. Hi, Owen. I'm so sorry about what happened. I had no idea that Trent was... Neither did I until recently. Listen, I was wondering if we could meet somewhere and talk. I think we might be able to help each other. Help each other how? Well, for starters, I have some information about Trent that you might find interesting. Information about other women. Another pause, longer this time. What kind of information? The kind that's better discussed in person. Are you free for coffee this afternoon? We met at Starbucks on Main Street, far enough from Murphy's to avoid the gossip mill, but public enough to keep things civilized. Laurel looked like she'd been crying for 12 hours straight, which she probably had. I keep thinking I should have seen it coming, she said, stirring sugar into her latte. The late nights, the mysterious phone calls. But I trusted him. Trust isn't a character flaw, I said. It just makes us easy targets for people who don't deserve it. I showed her the photos Gina had described, which I'd managed to identify through some creative Facebook stalking. The redhead was Sharon Mills, married to a local contractor. The brunette was Jessica Hartley, whose husband owned 3 car dealerships. The bank employee was Patricia Wong, Jerry Wong's wife. He's been busy, Laurel said quietly, studying the photos. Very busy, and very careless. These are just the ones I could identify from one bartender's description. Why are you showing me this? Because I think Trent Malloy needs to learn that actions have consequences, and I think Nina needs to understand that she's not as special as she thinks she is. Laurel looked up from the photos. What did you have in mind? I told her. By the time I was finished, she was smiling for the first time since I'd met her. That's diabolical, she said. That's the point. We shook hands like business partners, which I suppose we were now. Partners in the business of evening scores. My second call was to Mike Patterson, Nina's boss at Premium Properties. Mike was a sleazy little man who'd been hitting on Nina for years, but he was also cheap enough to care about employee expense fraud. Owen, hey, how are you holding up? Saw the video from last night. That was rough, buddy. I'm managing, Mike. Actually, that's why I'm calling. I've been going through some of Nina's paperwork, trying to figure out our finances for the divorce, and I found some things that might interest you. What kind of things? Expense reports that don't match up with her actual shoots. Hotel charges for clients that don't exist. That sort of thing. The line went quiet. Mike might be a pig, but he was a pig who understood liability. How much are we talking about? Couple $1,000s over the past few months. Maybe more. I haven't finished going through everything yet. Jesus. Owen, I appreciate you bringing this to me, but you understand I'm going to have to investigate. If what you're saying is true, Nina's going to be in serious trouble. I understand. I just thought you should know. After I hung up, I allowed myself a small smile. Nina would be getting a very unpleasant phone call from her boss within the hour. My third call was to Tony. Owen, man, how are you doing? I've been worried about you. I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. I need a favor. Name it. You still in touch with that private investigator you used when your ex was trying to hide assets? Dave Morrison? Yeah, we grab beers sometimes. Why? I need someone to document some things for me. Someone discreet. What kind of things? The kind that hold up in divorce court. Tony was quiet for a moment. Owen, are you sure about this? I mean, you've got grounds already. Everyone saw what happened last night. I'm not just looking for grounds, Tony. I'm looking for scorched earth. He gave me Dave Morrison's number without any more questions. Good friends know when to stop asking and start helping. Dave turned out to be a thin, nervous man who looked like an accountant but had the instincts of a hound. We met at his office, a cramped space above a dry cleaner that smelled like chemicals and desperation. Your friend Tony says you need documentation, he said, pulling out a legal pad. My wife's been having an affair. I want proof that will hold up in court. Photos, video, whatever it takes. That's pretty standard. What's your timeline? Fast. She's staying with him now, so they won't be as careful as they were before. Dave quoted me a price that made me wince, but I handed over my credit card anyway. Some things are worth paying for. One more thing, I said as he was writing up the contract. The guy she's with? He's got a history of cheating. I'd be interested in documentation of that too if you happen to come across it. Dave looked up from his paperwork. You planning to share that information with anyone in particular? His fiancée. She deserves to know what kind of man she was planning to marry. Fair enough. I'll see what I can do. I left Dave's office feeling better than I had since New Year's Eve. For the first time in months, maybe years, I had a plan. More than that, I had purpose. My phone buzzed with a text message as I was walking back to my car. It was from Nina. Mike fired me. We need to talk. I typed back, no, we don't. Another message came through immediately. This is insane, Owen. You can't destroy my life because you're mad about one mistake. One mistake? I replied. Try 6 months of mistakes. Try stealing from your company to pay for hotel rooms. Try humiliating me in front of our friends and neighbors. I'm coming over. We're going to work this out like adults. I won't be home. I'm having dinner with Laurel Chen. You remember Laurel? Your boyfriend's ex-fiancée? The phone stayed quiet after that. I drove home to find Trent's truck in my driveway and the man himself standing on my front porch looking like he wanted to punch something, preferably me. We need to talk, he said as I got out of my car. Do we? You're messing with things you don't understand, Owen. Nina's upset. She's been crying all day. That's terrible. I'm sure you'll comfort her. He stepped off the porch, moving into my personal space the way men do when they want to intimidate someone. Trent had 4 inches and probably 40 pounds on me, and he was used to using his size to get what he wanted. "You think you're real smart, don't you? Getting Nina fired, turning Laurel against me? But you're not as clever as you think." "Clever enough to figure out that my wife was cheating on me, which apparently makes me smarter than your fiancée." His face went red. "Leave Laurel out of this." "Why?" "You did." He grabbed my shirt and shoved me back against my car. For a moment, I thought he might actually hit me. Then he seemed to remember that we were standing in full view of the neighborhood, and several of my neighbors were already watching from their windows. "This isn't over," he said, letting me go. "No," I agreed, straightening my shirt. "It's not." He got in his truck and drove off, leaving rubber on my driveway. I waved to Mrs. Henderson, who was watching from her kitchen window, and went inside to pour myself a drink. My phone rang an hour later. It was Laurel. "How did it go with Mike?" she asked. "Nina's unemployed as of this afternoon." "Good. I've got news too. I called Sharon Mills and Jessica Hartley, told them I had some information about their husbands they might want to see." "And?" "We're meeting tomorrow night at my apartment. I think they're going to be very interested in what we have to show them." I raised my glass in a toast to no one in particular. "Here's to new partnerships." "Here's to making them pay," Laurel replied. The Millbrook Community Festival happened every year in February, a desperate attempt to bring some life to the town during the quietest part of winter. Local businesses set up booths in the town square, the volunteer fire department sold hot chocolate, and the mayor gave a speech about community spirit that no one listened to. This year, I volunteered to help with the audio-visual setup. "You sure you know how to work this thing?" asked Jim Bradley, the festival coordinator, as I connected cables to the projection system. "I've set up a few presentations in my time," I said. "Don't worry, everything will work perfectly." It had been 6 weeks since New Year's Eve, and the revenge campaign was proceeding exactly according to plan. Nina was living in a studio apartment above the hardware store, surviving on unemployment checks and the occasional freelance photography job. Trent had moved back in with his mother after Laurel threw him out, and his landscaping business started losing clients. Funny how quickly people stopped wanting to hire a man who'd been publicly exposed as a serial cheater. Dave Morrison had done excellent work. The photos of Trent with various women around town were crystal clear, and the video of him and Nina fighting in the parking lot of the Riverside Inn was practically cinematic. But the real masterpiece was the recording he'd made of Nina trying to convince her former boss to give her another chance by offering to sleep with him. Mike Patterson had turned her down, but not before Dave got it all on tape. "Testing, testing," I said into the microphone, my voice echoing across the town square. "Looks like we're all set." The festival was in full swing by noon. Half the town was there, bundled up in winter coats, drinking hot cider and pretending to enjoy themselves. I spotted Nina near the craft booths, wearing dark sunglasses and trying to blend into the crowd. Trent was by the food trucks, talking to a woman I didn't recognize. At 2 o'clock, Mayor Davidson took the stage for his annual address. I waited until he was finished, then stepped up to the microphone. "Before we continue," I said, "I'd like to share a special presentation about community values and the importance of honesty in our relationships with our neighbors." I clicked the remote, and the first slide appeared on the large screen behind me. "The Real Lives of Millbrook, a documentary." The crowd murmured, not sure what they were seeing. Then the second slide came up, a photo of Nina and Trent kissing at our New Year's party, with the caption, "When marriage vows don't matter." The murmuring got louder. The third slide was a screenshot of Nina's expense reports, with the fraudulent entries highlighted in red. "When honesty doesn't pay the bills." I saw Mike Patterson near the back of the crowd, his face going pale. The fourth slide was a photo Dave had taken of Trent with Sharon Mills outside a restaurant in Hartford. When engagement rings are just jewelry. Sharon's husband was standing 10 feet away from her. I watched him turn to look at his wife, who was suddenly very interested in her phone. "What the hell is this?" someone shouted from the crowd. I clicked to the next slide. Trent with Jessica Hartley at a hotel in New Haven. Then Patricia Wong getting into Trent's truck outside the bank where she worked. The crowd was getting restless now, voices raised, people pointing at the screen and at each other. I saw Nina pushing through the crowd, trying to get to the stage. Trent was moving in the same direction, his face dark with anger. "Owen, turn that off!" Nina yelled. I clicked to the final slide. A collage of text messages between Nina and Trent, planning their affair, laughing about their respective partners, discussing how to maximize Nina's expense account fraud to pay for their hotel visits. "This is what betrayal looks like," I said into the microphone, my voice carrying over the crowd noise. "This is what happens when people think they're smarter than everyone else. When they think their neighbors are too stupid to notice what's going on right under their noses." Trent reached the stage first, jumping up and grabbing for the remote. I stepped back, keeping it out of his reach. "You snake," he snarled. "I'll ruin you for this." "In front of 300 witnesses?" I said. "That doesn't seem very smart." Nina made it onto the stage, tears streaming down her face. "Owen, please, stop this. You're destroying everything." "I'm not destroying anything," I replied. "I'm just showing people what you already destroyed." The crowd was in chaos now. I could see Sharon Mills confronting her husband, Jessica Hartley, on her phone, probably calling a lawyer. Patricia Wong had disappeared entirely, but her husband Jerry was standing by the hot chocolate stand, staring at the screen like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said into the microphone, "I want to thank you all for coming to the festival today. I hope you've learned as much as I have about the importance of truth in our community." I turned off the projector and handed the remote to Jim Bradley, who looked like he wanted to crawl under the stage and hide. "Owen Barlow, you're finished," Trent said, loud enough for half the crowd to hear. "Probably," I agreed, "but at least I'll pass as honest." Security, such as it was at a small-town festival, finally arrived in the form of 2 volunteer firefighters who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. "Folks, let's all just calm down," one of them said. "Calm down?" Nina shrieked. "He just destroyed my life in front of the entire town." "You destroyed your own life," I said. "I just provided the documentation." She swung at me then, a wild, clumsy punch that I easily ducked. She stumbled, off balance in her high heels, and fell against the microphone stand. The feedback squeal that resulted was loud enough to make everyone in the square wince. "Nina, come on," Trent said, helping her up. "Let's get out of here." "This isn't over," she said to me, mascara running down her cheeks. "You think you've won, but this isn't over." "Yes, it is," I said. "It's been over since New Year's Eve. You just didn't know it yet." They left together, pushing through the crowd while people whispered and pointed. I stayed on the stage, watching them go, feeling a satisfaction so complete it was almost peaceful. "Owen," Jim Bradley said quietly, "you know I'm going to have to ban you from volunteering for any future town events, right?" "I understand. Was it worth it?" I looked out at the crowd, at the faces of people who would be talking about this day for years to come, at the husbands and wives who were having very serious conversations about trust and fidelity, at the neighbors who were seeing each other clearly for the first time. "Ask me tomorrow," I said, but I already knew the answer. 3 days after the festival, Trent showed up at Murphy's bar looking for a fight. Unfortunately for him, I wasn't drinking alone. "There he is," Trent announced to the room, pointing at me like I was a wanted criminal. "The man who destroyed half the marriages in town with his little slideshow." I was sitting at the bar with Tony and Dave Morrison, celebrating the completion of our project with a round of whiskey that Gina had declared on the house for services to the community. The bar was more crowded than usual for a Wednesday night, probably because word had gotten around that Owen Barlow might be making another public appearance. "Evening, Trent," I said without turning around. How's the landscaping business? You know damn well how it is. I've lost 6 clients this week. 6 families who won't even return my calls. That's terrible. Have you considered that it might be because you were sleeping with their wives? He grabbed my shoulder and spun me around on the bar stool. You think you're real funny, don't you? I have my moments. Tony stood up, all 6 feet 4 inches of him. Problem here, Owen? No problem, I said. Trent was just leaving. Like hell I am. You owe me, Barlow. You owe me for my business, my reputation, my relationship with Laurel. I owe you? I laughed. That's rich. What exactly do I owe you for? Screwing my wife? Stealing my neighbor's trust? Being stupid enough to get caught? You set me up. That whole thing at the festival was a setup. No, Trent. You set yourself up. I just provided the venue. He swung at me then, a wild right hook that would have taken my head off if it had connected. But Trent was drunk and angry, and I'd been expecting it. I leaned back, let his momentum carry him forward, and watched him stumble into the bar. Now that, Gina said, not even looking up from the glass she was cleaning, was assault, in front of witnesses. Owen, you want me to call the cops? Not necessary, I said. I think Trent's leaving now. I'm not going anywhere until you and I settle this. Settle what? You stole my wife. I exposed your business practices. You destroyed my marriage. I destroyed your reputation. Seems pretty even to me. Even? He was shouting now, drawing attention from every table in the bar. You call this even? I've lost everything. So had I. The difference is, you deserved it. That's when he came at me again, this time with more control. He caught me around the waist and we both went down, knocking over my bar stool and sending my drink flying. We rolled across the floor, trading ineffective punches, until Tony and Dave pulled us apart. Enough! Gina shouted. Both of you out! I don't need this kind of trouble in my place. Fine by me, I said, straightening my shirt. I was done here anyway. I walked toward the door, expecting Trent to follow. He did, of course. Men like Trent always have to have the last word. The parking lot behind Murphy's was dimly lit and mostly empty, perfect for the kind of conversation that Trent seemed determined to have. This ends tonight, he said, pulling off his jacket. Just you and me. You sure about that? Because I'm not the one with everything to lose here. What's that supposed to mean? I pulled out my phone and showed him the video Dave had taken 2 days earlier. Trent meeting with a woman outside a motel in Waterbury. A woman who definitely wasn't Nina. Meet Rebecca Santos, I said. Married to Carlos Santos, who owns 3 restaurants in Hartford and has a very bad temper. Apparently, you've been comforting each other during this difficult time. Trent's face went white. You snake. You've been having me followed. I've been documenting your activities. There's a difference. What do you want? I want you to leave town, Trent. Pack up your business, say goodbye to your mother, and find somewhere else to spread your particular brand of charm. And if I don't? Then Carlos Santos gets a copy of this video, along with his wife's credit card records showing payments to the Waterbury Motel, along with the photos Dave took of you two in the parking lot yesterday. He stared at the phone screen, watching himself kiss another married woman while his own life fell apart around him. You're insane, he said finally. No, I'm thorough. There's a difference. What about Nina? What about her? She's part of this too. She made the same choices I did. Nina's my problem. You're just the symptom. He looked like he wanted to hit me again, but the fight had gone out of him. Amazing how quickly a man's courage evaporates when he realizes he's not the smartest person in the room. How long do I have? 2 weeks. After that, I start sharing my video collection with some very interested parties. He got in his truck without another word and drove away, leaving me alone in the parking lot with my phone and my satisfaction. I went back into Murphy's, where Tony and Dave were waiting with fresh drinks and concerned expressions. You okay? Tony asked. Never better. You think he'll actually leave town? He'll leave. Men like Trent are cowards when they can't control the situation. Gina set a whiskey in front of me. What about Nina? Nina's next. Nina came home on a Saturday morning in March, using the key I'd never bothered to take away from her. I was waiting in the kitchen with coffee and the divorce papers my lawyer had drawn up. "We need to talk," she said, setting her purse on the counter like she still lived here. "No, we need to sign papers. There's a difference." She looked terrible. 3 months of unemployment and public humiliation had taken their toll. Her hair needed cutting, her clothes were wrinkled, and she'd lost weight in all the wrong places. The confident, beautiful woman who'd destroyed our marriage at the New Year's party was gone, replaced by someone who looked desperate and defeated. "Owen, please. I know I made mistakes, but we can work this out. We can go to counseling, start over somewhere else." "Start over?" I laughed. "Nina, you stole money from your employer to pay for hotel rooms where you could cheat on me. You humiliated me in front of our friends and neighbors. You destroyed 8 years of marriage for a landscaper who was cheating on you with half the town. What exactly do you think we're starting over from?" "I know you're angry. I'm not angry anymore. I was angry 3 months ago. Now I'm just done." I slid the divorce papers across the table. "Sign these and we can both move on with our lives." She picked up the papers and started reading. I watched her face change as she realized what she was looking at. "This is ridiculous. You're asking for everything. The house, the cars, my photography equipment. I'm asking for what's mine. The house was a gift from my parents. The cars are in my name. Your photography equipment can be considered a business expense, but since you don't have a business anymore, you can't do this. I have rights. You have the right to hire a lawyer and fight me in court. Of course, that's expensive and you don't have a job. Plus, I have documentation of your adultery and your embezzlement. How do you think that's going to play in front of a judge?" She set the papers down and started crying. Real tears this time, not the manipulative kind she'd used during our marriage when she wanted something. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry, Owen. I know I hurt you, but I never meant for things to go this far." "You never meant to get caught." "That's not true. I loved you. I still love you." "No, you don't. You love the idea of not being alone. You love having someone to take care of you while you figure out what you want to do with your life. But you don't love me. If you loved me, you wouldn't have spent 6 months planning to leave me for another man." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the yard I'd maintained for 8 years. The flower beds Nina had never helped with, the lawn I'd mowed every weekend, the fence I'd painted while she complained about the color. "Where's Trent?" I asked. "Gone. He left town 2 weeks ago. Didn't even say goodbye." "I know. I told him to leave." She looked up sharply. "What?" "I gave him a choice. Leave quietly, or have his extracurricular activities shared with some very dangerous people. He chose to leave." You threatened him?" "I educated him about the consequences of his actions, just like I'm educating you now." I turned back to face her. "Sign the papers, Nina. Take what I'm offering you and start over somewhere else, because this is the best deal you're going to get. And if I don't, then we go to court. I present evidence of your adultery and embezzlement. You try to explain to a judge why you deserve half of everything I own after spending 6 months stealing from your employer to pay for hotel rooms where you could cheat on me. How do you think that's going to work out for you?" She stared at the papers for a long time, probably calculating her options and realizing she didn't have any good ones. "I need a lawyer to look at these. You need a job to pay for a lawyer, and you need a clean reputation to get a job. We both know you don't have either of those things." She picked up the pen and signed her name at the bottom of each page, her hand shaking slightly. "There," she said. "Are you happy now?" "I'm satisfied." "What's the difference?" "Happy is what I was before I found out my wife was a lying, cheating thief. Satisfied is what I am now, that she's getting what she deserves." She gathered up her purse and headed for the door, then stopped and turned back. You know what the funny thing is, Owen? I really did love you once. Back in college, when we first met. You were sweet and funny, and you made me feel special. What happened to that feeling? You stopped trying. You got comfortable. You took me for granted. So, you decided to cheat on me instead of talking to me about it. I decided to find someone who made me feel alive again. How did that work out for you? She didn't answer, just walked out the door and out of my life, leaving me alone in the house that was finally, completely mine. I poured myself another cup of coffee and sat down to read the newspaper. The front page had a story about the upcoming mayoral election and a feature about the new restaurant opening downtown. Normal, boring small-town news. No mention of cheating wives or public humiliations or revenge plots that had consumed 3 months of my life. I was okay with that. Some stories don't need to be in the newspaper to be worth telling. My phone buzzed with a text message from Tony. Beer tonight? Janet's making her famous chili. I typed back, sounds perfect. Another message, this one from Laurel. Heard Nina signed the papers. Congratulations. Thanks for all your help. Thank you for showing me what Trent really was. I'm seeing someone new now, a teacher. He's actually faithful. Good for you. I finished my coffee and walked through the house, room by room, taking inventory of my new life. It was quieter without Nina's constant chatter, cleaner without her magazines and makeup scattered everywhere, more peaceful without the underlying tension that had defined our marriage for the past year. In the bedroom, I opened the closet and looked at the empty space where her clothes used to hang. Tomorrow, I'd turn it into a home office, or maybe a workshop. I'd always wanted to try woodworking. The doorbell rang as I was making lunch. I opened it to find Mrs. Henderson from next door, holding a casserole dish and wearing the expression of someone who had gossip to share. Owen, dear, I brought you some tuna casserole. I thought you might be tired of cooking for yourself. That's very kind of you, Mrs. Henderson. I saw Nina leaving this morning with her suitcases. I assume that means the divorce is final. Well, I think you're better off without her. That business at the festival was just disgraceful. No woman should treat her husband that way, especially in public. I appreciate the support. You know, my niece Sarah is coming to visit next month. She's a lovely girl, just finished her master's degree in library science. Very responsible, nothing like that, Nina. I'll keep that in mind. Mrs. Henderson beamed like she'd just solved world hunger. I'll tell her all about you. You're such a nice young man, Owen. You deserve someone who appreciates you. After she left, I sat down with the tuna casserole and thought about Sarah the librarian. It had been a long time since I'd been on a date with someone who wasn't my wife. The prospect was both terrifying and exciting. My phone rang. It was Dave Morrison. Owen, I've got some news you might find interesting. What kind of news? Remember that video of Trent with Rebecca Santos? Well, it turns out Carlos Santos saw it. Someone sent him an anonymous copy. Really? How unfortunate for Trent. Yeah, well, Trent's in the hospital in Albany. Broken ribs, concussion, various cuts and bruises. Apparently, he had an accident. What kind of accident? The kind that happens when you sleep with a restaurant owner's wife and he finds out about it. Carlos has 3 brothers, all of whom work in construction. They're very protective of the family honor. I felt a momentary twinge of something that might have been guilt. Then I remembered New Year's Eve, and the feeling passed. Is he going to be okay? He'll live, but I don't think he's going to be bothering anyone in Millbrook again anytime soon. That's probably for the best. After Dave hung up, I finished my lunch and went outside to check the mail. Spring was coming early this year, and the daffodils Nina had planted 3 years ago were starting to bloom. I'd keep them, I decided. They were pretty, and they reminded me that some things survive even when everything around them fades. The mailbox contained the usual collection of bills and advertisements, plus a letter from Nina's sister in California. I almost threw it away, then decided to open it. Dear Owen, it read, I heard about the divorce and I wanted you to know that I'm sorry things didn't work out. I always liked you, and I think Nina made a terrible mistake. If you ever want to visit California, you're always welcome here. I have a friend who runs a tech company in San Francisco, and he's always looking for good project managers. Just a thought. Take care of yourself. Love, Jennifer. I folded the letter and put it in my pocket. California. I'd never been to California. It might be nice to start over somewhere completely new, where no one knew about my cheating ex-wife, or my public revenge, or the festival that had become the most talked-about event in Millbrook's recent history. But not yet. I had a house to enjoy, a workshop to build, and maybe a librarian to meet. The future could wait. I spent the rest of the afternoon working in the yard, pulling weeds and planning where to plant the vegetable garden I'd always wanted. The physical work felt good, cleansing somehow, like I was literally digging up the past and preparing the ground for something new. As the sun was setting, I heard a car pull into the driveway. It was Tony, arriving early for dinner. How'd it go with Nina? He asked, getting out of his car. She signed the papers. How do you feel? I thought about it for a moment, trying to identify the emotion I'd been carrying around all day. It wasn't happiness exactly. It wasn't sadness either. It was something cleaner and more final. Free, I said finally. I feel free. Tony grinned and slapped me on the back. Good for you, man. You ready for some of Janet's chili? I'm starving. We walked toward his car, and I took one last look at the house that was now completely mine. Tomorrow, I'd start the next chapter of my life. Tonight, I'd have dinner with friends who'd stood by me through the worst 3 months of my adult life. It was a good way to end the story.